Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to kind of go behind the curtain and see what makes successful CEOs tick.
Yeah.
We've got this awesome compilation of like 20 common CEO interview questions and answers.
And we're going to really dissect them,
Yeah,
pull out those golden nuggets that you can actually use.
exactly. It's not just about getting the job right. It's about like
Yeah.
understanding that mindset, the skills, the real challenges they face every day.
Exactly.
And whether you're, hoping to be a CEO someday, or you're leading a team now, or just, are fascinated by how they think,
Yeah.
there's something here for everyone.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right in. One of the first questions they always ask is, how do you ensure that the company's vision and mission are actually like happening every day?
It's a big one, right?
Yeah, huge.
Because it's one thing to have a vision statement
Right.
sitting on a shelf, but it doesn't actually do anything unless it's woven into the fabric of the company. So the source talks about the CEO's role in creating that kind of living, breathing culture where everyone from the entry-level folks to the executives
Yeah.
understands and feels ownership of that vision.
Yeah, so it's not just top-down, direction. It's really about getting buy-in at every level.
Absolutely. And the source specifically mentions the importance of collaboration and open communication, creating a space where people feel comfortable sharing ideas, providing feedback, and working together to make that vision a reality.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But it can't just be a free-for-all, right? I mean, you got to have clear goals,
Mm.
ways to measure progress, and maybe even incentives to keep everyone moving in the right direction.
Definitely. It's about having a clear roadmap,
Right.
but also fostering a sense of shared purpose and ownership. One CEO in the source talked about creating a company-wide goal-setting program
Oh, interesting.
where each department develops their own objectives that directly link back to the overall company vision.
So cool.
So that way everyone feels connected to that bigger picture.
That's a really interesting approach. So you've got everyone rowing in the same direction, right? But then what happens when the market shifts,
Hmm.
or some new technology comes out,
Right.
or customer preferences change?
Right.
How do CEOs stay ahead of the curve and make sure the company stays relevant?
Yeah, you can't just bury your head in the sand.
Wow.
You have to be constantly learning and evolving. You can't just rely on what you already know.
For sure.
The source is very clear on this. CEOs need to be constantly learning and evolving. In fact, one CEO we read about specifically mentioned subscribing to industry publications like Harvard Business Review
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and The Economist, attending conferences like the World Economic Forum,
Right.
just to stay informed about emerging trends.
So it's really a multifaceted approach. You're not just like relying on one source of information.
Exactly.
You're out there learning.
It's about reading, listening, connecting with experts in your field, and even seeking out diverse perspectives that might challenge your own assumptions.
It's like that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room,
Yeah.
you're in the wrong room.
Exactly.
You got to surround yourself with people who are going to like push you
Absolutely.
and make you think about things differently.
And it's not just about gathering that information, it's about synthesizing it, making sense of it, and then translating it into those actionable decisions.
Which kind of brings us to the next big challenge: strategic planning.
Hmm.
We're talking about long-term plans
Right.
that shape the company's future.
Right.
Where do you even begin with that?
I know it can feel overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
But the source really breaks it down into manageable steps and emphasizes the importance of research, gathering data, talking to stakeholders, really understanding all of the moving parts.
Yeah.
One CEO even mentioned using a SWOT analysis,
Oh, yeah.
identifying strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
SWOT analysis. I remember that from like business school.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
And then the source really stresses that it's not about creating a plan in isolation.
Right.
Collaboration and communication are absolutely essential.
Especially at that level.
Yes, especially at that strategic level.
Mhm.
The source had a great anecdote about a CEO who developed a 3-year strategic plan
Okay.
by working directly with each department. He had each team outline their own objectives, ensuring they were aligned with the overall company strategy, but also allowing for that departmental expertise and ownership.
That's really smart. That way everybody feels like they're on the same page,
Exactly.
but they also have the power to
Yeah,
really, contribute
your own piece of it.
to their own success. Yeah, totally. Okay, so you've got a clear vision, a solid strategic plan, and everyone's working hard, but then conflict happens.
It always does.
What happens when two members of your executive team have totally opposing views on a critical decision?
Yeah, that's a tough situation.
Yeah.
But the source highlights the CEO's role as a facilitator in those situations.
Okay.
It's about maintaining that unified executive team, even when disagreements arise. And the source outlines a very specific approach.
Okay.
First, you hear both sides fully,
Mm.
without judgment. Then you consider all the options on the table and finally make a decision based on what's best for the company as a whole,
Right.
even if it means someone doesn't get their way.
I can imagine that's easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, it's definitely not easy, but the source emphasizes that transparency is key.
Oh, for sure.
You explain your rationale, you're open to feedback, you make sure everyone understands that the decision was made with the company's best interests in mind.
No one wants to feel like their voice isn't being heard,
Exactly.
even if they don't get their way.
Yeah.
And speaking of things not always going smoothly, change is inevitable,
Always.
especially in the business world. So how do CEOs guide their teams through those periods of, big change?
Yeah, where do you even start?
I know, it can be overwhelming.
It can be, but the source addresses this head on and provides a really helpful framework for navigating it.
Okay.
First, you communicate the need for change, not just the change itself.
Right.
People need to understand why it's necessary.
Yeah.
Then, you employ strategies to get everyone on board. This might involve providing training, offering support, or even just giving people time to adjust.
Right.
And finally, you anticipate and address the challenges that will inevitably arise. Change is never easy,
No.
but it can be managed effectively with the right approach.
They had a really compelling story about a CEO who had to restructure the company, and instead of just, dictating the changes, he worked with his team to develop the plan, and then they communicated super clearly to all the employees,
Right.
explained the rationale and addressed concerns.
That's a great example of leading through change effectively. It's about bringing people along on the journey.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's not just about here's what we're doing. It's here's how we're going to get there together. Okay, so we've got vision, strategy, conflict resolution, leading through change.
What about risk?
But what about risk? That's a big one.
Mhm.
Companies need to grow, and growth often means taking risks. So how do CEOs balance that need to grow with the need to be cautious?
Yeah,
It's tough balance.
it is.
So what does the source say about that?
Well, it emphasizes that CEOs need to be comfortable with taking calculated risks.
Okay.
And that requires weighing potential risks against potential rewards, thinking through different scenarios, and having that long-term perspective. You can't be paralyzed by fear,
Right.
but you also can't just be reckless.
It's like that old saying, the biggest risk is not taking any risk.
Exactly. And the source gives a great example of this in action. One CEO shared a story about how he decided to expand the company into a new market.
Okay.
And he talked about that rigorous decision-making process, the potential benefits, the risks they identified, and ultimately how that expansion led to a successful outcome.
So it's really about informed strategic risk-taking,
Yes.
not just being reckless.
It's about gathering information, analyzing the data, listening to those different perspectives, and then making a decision based on the best information available.
This is so insightful. I feel like we've already covered so much. We've
Yeah.
talked about vision and strategy and conflict and change and risk.
We're just getting started.
And we're just getting started. There's so much more to uncover in this deep dive into the world of CEOs. So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll keep exploring these awesome insights.
As we're kind of going through all these CEO insights, one thing that really stood out to me in the source material was the emphasis on building a strong board of directors.
Oh, yeah.
They play such a crucial role in a company's success.
It's not just a formality.
It's not just a box to check.
Right.
They're really the wise counsel,
Yeah.
the guardians of the company's long-term vision.
Yeah, they're the ones who are supposed to keep things on track, make sure the company's healthy.
Exactly.
But choosing the right people for that board,
Yeah.
that's a huge responsibility for a CEO.
It is.
What are some of the key qualities they look for, according to the source?
Well, it's definitely not just about finding the people with the most impressive resumes or the biggest names.
Right. It's got to be more than that.
While experience is important, the source highlights other factors like their track record of success,
Uh,
the unique perspectives they bring, and their ability to actually collaborate effectively with the other board members.
yeah, you want a dream team.
It's like assembling a team of all-stars.
Yeah, each with their own superpowers.
Exactly, each with their own strengths to contribute.
You want a diversity of viewpoints and experience, but you also need to make sure everyone can work together.
You need to make sure they can play nice in the sandbox.
Right, exactly.
And the source specifically mentions the importance of aligning with the company's mission and goals. You wouldn't want someone joining the board who has like a completely different vision for where the company should be going.
Oh no, that could lead to some major conflict down the road.
Exactly. It's about finding people who are truly invested in the company's success and who can provide that valuable guidance and support to the CEO.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the responsibilities and challenges CEOs face,
Right.
but what does success actually look like?
Yeah.
If you're sitting in that interview chair, how do you actually prove you've got the CEO stuff?
Right. What are they looking for beyond just like talking the talk?
Exactly.
That's where showcasing tangible achievements comes in.
Okay.
You need to be ready to share specific examples of successful initiatives that you led.
Not just participated in.
Not just you were there.
Yeah.
It's about demonstrating your impact, the decisions you made, and the results you achieved.
So it's not enough to just say like, oh, I improved sales.
Right.
You got to tell the story.
You got to tell a story of how you did it.
Yeah, how'd you pull that off?
One CEO in the source described a really successful product launch. And they talked about how they identified a gap in the market, collaborated with multiple teams to develop the product, overcame obstacles along the way, and ultimately achieved a successful launch that exceeded expectations.
So it's that level of detail that really brings those achievements to life
It paints a picture of you as a leader who can get things done.
and shows your thought process, your problem-solving skills.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit now and talk about communication.
Okay.
CEOs are constantly communicating with so many different people.
Oh, yeah.
The board, the executive team, employees, investors,
The media.
the media. Oh my gosh.
It's a lot of hats.
They must be masters of communication,
They
right?
have to be.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just being like a good speaker or a good writer.
Uh-huh.
The source emphasizes the importance of fostering that culture of open communication and collaboration throughout the entire organization.
It's got to be top to bottom.
Top to bottom, this involves regular meetings with both the board and the management team, but also
Those one-on-one conversations.
those crucial one-on-one connections
Yeah.
can be so valuable for building trust, understanding different perspectives,
Getting that pulse on what's happening.
and really getting a pulse on what's happening within the company.
Yeah, for sure.
And the source is very clear about the importance of transparency in all of these interactions.
Transparency, it always comes back to transparency.
It always comes back to transparency, making sure everyone has the information they need,
And that the right decisions are being made.
and that decisions are being made in the best interest of the company as a whole.
Transparency builds trust, and trust is essential for good leadership.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about something that might not be the most glamorous part of being a CEO,
Oh.
but is absolutely crucial legal and regulatory issues.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what insights does the source offer on navigating this complex landscape? Because it can get really complicated really fast.
It can get complicated quickly, and the stakes are high. The source actually had a really interesting example of a CEO who faced a very complex legal situation surrounding a new product launch.
Okay.
And it highlighted the need for strategic thinking, the ability to assess and manage risk, and that importance of collaboration with legal experts.
So they were able to identify those potential legal issues early on,
Really, identification is key. Yeah.
which is huge because then you
And
can
get ahead of it.
be proactive.
Exactly. And they worked closely with their legal team to develop a plan to address those issues and collaborated across departments to make sure that everything was in compliance.
That's a great example of how CEOs need to be actively involved in those legal and regulatory matters, even if they're not lawyers themselves.
Exactly.
They need to understand the risks, ask the right questions,
And surround themselves with experts.
surround themselves with experts who can guide them now.
Yes.
Shifting gears again, how do CEOs measure their progress? Is it all about poring over spreadsheets and financial reports?
I mean, those are important.
I imagine they are,
Mm.
but is there more to it than that? What does the source say about measuring success?
Well, the source acknowledges that those traditional metrics like revenue and profit are important,
Right.
but it encourages CEOs to go beyond those basic measures.
Okay.
It suggests using specific metrics that are tailored to the business and its unique goals.
Okay.
For example, one CEO they interviewed tracks customer satisfaction scores, employee engagement levels,
Oh, interesting.
and even social media sentiment to get a more holistic view of the company's performance.
Wow, so they're really trying to get a full picture,
The full picture, not just the
not
numbers.
just the dollars and
So,
cents. So they're looking beyond just the financial numbers and really trying to get a deeper understanding of how the company is performing across all these different areas.
and they even mentioned using some unconventional metrics like the number of customer testimonials or the frequency of employee-generated ideas as indicators of success.
Oh, wow.
It's about finding those metrics that really reflect the company's values and priorities.
I love that idea of using those less traditional metrics to measure things like customer loyalty and employee engagement. Okay, earlier we talked about the company's vision and mission,
Right.
but how do CEOs ensure those values are actually reflected in the day-to-day work? It's one thing to have a beautifully written mission statement,
Right.
but how do you make sure it's more than just words on a wall?
That's a great question. And the source emphasizes that it starts with communication. You have to constantly reinforce those values, talk about them,
Yeah.
model them in your own behavior.
Walk the walk.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just talking the talk. You need to implement systems and processes that support those values, develop performance metrics that align with them,
Okay.
and make sure every decision you make is consistent with the company's core principles.
So it's about weaving those values into every aspect of the company's operations.
Exactly. One CEO in the source talked about how they use customer satisfaction surveys not just to measure customer happiness,
Okay.
but also to identify areas where the company might be falling short of their stated values.
That's smart.
If they see a pattern of negative feedback related to a specific
Oh,
value,
that's a good way to pinpoint it.
they know they need to take action.
Yeah, you got to address it.
It's about proactively aligning your actions with your values,
I like that.
not just saying it, but doing it.
And living it.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of staying ahead of the curve competition,
Yeah.
it's a reality in pretty much every industry.
It's a jungle out there.
How do CEOs stay informed about what their competitors are doing and then make strategic decisions to stay ahead of the game? Do they have like a team of spies, or are they just really good at Google searches?
Huh. Well, a bit of online sleuthing might be involved,
Probably.
but the source highlights a much more strategic and multifaceted approach.
Okay.
They talk about attending industry events, subscribing to relevant publications, staying current on financial news, and conducting really thorough competitive analyses.
So it's about being constantly plugged in, gathering information from multiple sources, really understanding that competitive landscape.
Exactly. One CEO mentioned using a tool called a competitor matrix,
Okay.
which is basically a visual representation of your competitor's strengths and weaknesses.
Interesting.
It helps you identify potential threats, but also opportunities to differentiate your company.
So you can see where you can like really shine.
Exactly, where you can gain that competitive edge.
Okay, so you're gathering all this information constantly, but then you have to actually use it
Right.
to make informed decisions.
Whether it's investing in a new marketing campaign, developing a new product, or even acquiring another company,
Wow.
CEOs need to be able to translate that information into action.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, but let's face it, sometimes things don't go according to plan.
That's life.
Crises happen. Unexpected challenges arise. How do CEOs handle those moments of uncertainty and keep everyone moving forward when the pressure is on?
That's where true leadership really shines through. It's
Oh.
about staying calm, making those clear and timely decisions, providing support to your team,
Yep.
and focusing on maintaining morale. The source had a really powerful example of how one CEO handled the COVID-19 pandemic.
I remember that time. It was a period of such uncertainty and disruption for so many businesses.
It was for everyone. This CEO took a very proactive approach.
Okay.
They set up regular team meetings to keep everyone informed and connected. They provided resources and support to employees who were struggling, and they even implemented recognition programs to acknowledge people's hard work and dedication.
So it was about communication support recognition.
And just being present, being empathetic, and providing that steady hand during a storm.
Yeah, that's so important.
Those are really important qualities in a leader, especially during times of crisis.
It's about inspiring confidence and trust even when you don't have all the answers.
Right. And speaking of valuable assets, employees,
Oh, yes, people.
attracting and retaining top talent is crucial
Absolutely.
for any company's success. So how do CEOs approach this challenge? Is it all about offering like the highest salaries and the fanciest perks?
I'm guessing it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah. It's definitely more nuanced than that. The source emphasizes that while compensation and benefits are important,
Of course.
it's really about creating a work environment where people feel valued,
Uh-huh.
challenged and supported.
Okay.
It's about offering opportunities for professional development, providing the resources they need to succeed,
Yeah.
and even just creating a culture of respect and appreciation.
So you're creating a place where people actually want to come to work.
Exactly. And the source highlights the importance of measuring employee satisfaction. One CEO they interviewed uses anonymous employee surveys
Interesting.
to gather feedback on everything from the company culture to management styles.
So they're really trying to get a sense of what's working, what's not,
And they use that feedback to make real changes,
and make things better.
to improve that employee experience.
It's about showing your employees that you value their input, that you're committed to creating that positive work environment.
Exactly. And that can make a huge difference in attracting and retaining that top talent.
For sure, people want to work for companies that care about them,
Yeah.
that invest in their growth, that provide a supportive and inclusive work environment.
Absolutely.
Okay, before we wrap up part 2 of our CEO deep dive,
Okay.
let's touch on one more crucial aspect of running a successful business compliance.
Right.
It might not be the most exciting topic,
It's not the sexiest topic.
but it's essential.
It is essential in today's world.
So what does the source say about the CEO's role in maintaining compliance?
The source is very clear on this. The CEO is ultimately responsible for making sure the company complies with all applicable laws and regulations.
It all comes back to the CEO.
The buck stops there.
So we're talking about establishing processes,
Yeah.
systems, a whole culture of compliance within the organization.
Exactly. And having a dedicated team of experts
Yeah.
who are monitoring those changes in regulations, assessing risks,
Keeping everybody updated.
and providing regular updates to the leadership team. One CEO in the source talked about regular compliance audits to identify any potential areas of weakness and take corrective action.
Yeah, you got to catch those things early.
It's about building compliance into the fabric of the company, making it part of how everyone operates from the top down.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive already,
I know.
but there's still more to explore.
There's always more.
So join us for part 3, where we'll wrap up our exploration of these CEO insights and leave you with some final thought-provoking questions to ponder. All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the world of CEOs. We've talked about so much. Vision, strategy, navigating all those challenges, building a strong team. But one thing that keeps coming up in the source material is innovation.
Oh, definitely.
It's not just about keeping up with the competition, right? It's about pushing those boundaries and creating the future. So how do CEOs actually foster that kind of innovative culture?
Well, one key takeaway from the source is that it starts by creating an environment where employees feel comfortable taking risks.
Okay.
Where they know that it's okay to try new things, and if they fail,
Yeah.
that's seen as a learning opportunity.
It's not like, you failed, you're out. It's like, what did we learn from that? How can we grow?
Exactly. So the source highlights some really interesting initiatives that companies are using to encourage innovation, like setting up idea labs where employees can brainstorm and experiment, hosting hackathons, which I think is really cool.
I've heard about those. It's where everyone gets together and just brainstorms ideas really fast, right?
Yeah, it's all about that creative problem solving and rapid prototyping.
Love it.
And, also having flexible work policies so people have the time and space to pursue their own ideas.
I love the idea of those idea labs, though.
Yes.
It's like a dedicated space for innovation.
Really?
It really signals to your employees that their creativity is valued.
And the source also talks about incentivizing out-of-the-box thinking. Maybe offering rewards for innovative ideas or just recognizing employees who really contribute to that.
So it's really about creating that environment, providing the resources, and then recognizing and rewarding those who really contribute to the company's goals.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to something that can seriously make or break a company. It's public image.
Oh, yeah, big one.
What's the CEO's role in shaping and protecting that image?
Well, the CEO is often like the face of the company. Their actions and their words, even their personal brand, can have a huge impact on how the public sees the company. The source emphasizes having a proactive approach to managing public image.
So it's not just about reacting to bad press or trying to hide things.
No, definitely not. The source recommends having a strong PR team, staying up to date on current events and trends in the industry, engaging with stakeholders on social media and other channels,
Okay.
and, most importantly, prioritizing transparency.
Transparency. There it is again.
Right. It just keeps coming up.
It really does.
And it's because transparency builds trust and credibility, which are essential for a good public image, especially when things get tough. And they will. Every company faces challenges and setbacks at some point.
Absolutely.
But when they do, that foundation of trust and transparency that you've built, can really make a huge difference in how the public sees the company and its leadership.
Yeah, it's about being open and honest, communicating clearly, and taking responsibility for your actions.
Speaking of relationships, let's talk about stakeholders.
Mm.
Investors, customers, partners, the community. These connections are so vital for success. How do CEOs go beyond just those basic interactions and build those really strong relationships?
Well, it's definitely about more than just, signing contracts and closing deals. The source emphasizes strategic networking, attending industry events, leveraging your existing network to make new connections,
Okay.
and finding creative ways to wow your stakeholders,
Yeah.
create those custom experiences that go above and beyond.
It's about making people feel valued, not just as like business partners, but as people.
Exactly. And the source also talks about really nurturing those relationships over time, staying in touch, really listening to their needs,
Hmm.
providing value, even when there's not a direct business opportunity right in front of you.
It's about building genuine connections that are based on mutual respect and shared goals.
Yes. And those strong relationships can really pay off in the long run. It can lead to new partnerships, increased customer loyalty, a stronger reputation overall.
Okay, we've covered so much in this deep dive, but I want to end on something that's really important to me. Motivating employees. It's one thing to set those goals and expectations, but how do CEOs really unlock their team's full potential, inspire them to do their best work?
It's the dream, right? To have a team that's engaged, motivated, really firing on all cylinders. How do you make that happen?
It all comes back to creating that positive and motivating work environment. One that's based on trust and respect, open communication, where
Okay.
people feel valued and empowered.
Okay, so that environment is the foundation. Exactly. And then the source highlights some specific strategies that CEOs can use, like regular one-on-one meetings to provide feedback and support, opportunities for professional development and growth, and really recognizing and rewarding employees for their contributions.
It's about showing your team that you believe in them,
Yeah.
that you're invested in their success, and that you appreciate their hard work.
The source also mentions giving people autonomy, empowering them to take ownership of their work.
Okay.
One CEO talked about implementing a results-only work environment.
Oh, interesting. What's that?
So basically, employees have flexibility to work when and where they're most productive, as long as they deliver those results.
So it's about trusting your team to get the job done, without micromanaging them. It's about creating that sense of ownership and accountability.
Absolutely. And the source says this kind of trust and empowerment can lead to increased motivation, creativity, and productivity.
That makes a lot of sense. So there you have it. We've taken a deep dive into the world of CEOs and explored their responsibilities, the challenges, and some of the keys to their success.
We covered a lot of ground: crafting a vision, motivating a team, navigating risks, building those all-important relationships.
And remember, these insights are valuable, whether you're hoping to be a CEO yourself or leading a team now, or even if you're just interested in understanding how successful leaders think.
There's something here for everyone.
What really resonated with you? What are you going to take away and apply to your own work, your own leadership style?
We want to hear from you. And remember, this journey of leadership and learning, it never really ends.
There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to achieve. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.